predicting this year's league winners. We're going to give you a couple of options to each position. Who are the guys who, over the next 3 weeks, are going to be the reason why some teams in fantasy football win championships? We see it every year. There's always a handful of players that if you didn't have one of those guys on your rosters, you probably didn't win your title. There could be multiple of them. We're going to go through them today. We're going to start at the quarterback position. I'm going to predict Baker Mayfield is going to be on a lot of league-winning rosters. He's having the best season of his career. He's QB5 in fantasy points per game. He's number 4 in passing yards. He's 3rd in passing touchdowns. This is Baker Mayfield. I think the Browns are having some regrets right now. He's also 3rd in completion percentage. And looking ahead, the Bucs schedule, week 15. They get the Chargers. Not the easiest matchup, but that could turn into a shootout. There could be a lot of points scored in that game. The Cowboys in week 16, they're the 4th easiest matchup for quarterbacks from a fantasy football perspective. And the Panthers in the fantasy championship week, they present the 5th easiest matchup for the quarterback position. Baker Mayfield, he's been hot. His defense is bad, which means he has to drop back and throw the ball a bunch of times a game. It's on him. The weight, the team, the offense is on Baker Mayfield's shoulders. He is going to carry them to the playoffs. He's going to carry our fantasy teams to championships. I also think Bo Nix has a chance to be a league winner over the next 3 weeks. He's in the running for Offensive Rookie of the Year. I know that the season kind of started rough for him. It was all, check downs, low ADOT. He relied on scrambling. But now, over the last 6 weeks or so, Bo Nix is throwing the ball down the field. And he's throwing the ball down the field with the best of them. He's 4th in completions of 10-plus air yards. He's 3rd in total air yards. And he's number 1 on the season in deep ball attempts. And he's still getting it done with his legs. He's run for over 300 yards, and he's got 4 rushing touchdowns. He's the QB8 in fantasy points per game. A lot of people, including myself, were very skeptical on Bo Nix coming out of Oregon last year, coming into the NFL. The last quarterback picked in the first round of the draft this year. Were the Broncos fools? Were they reaching? Apparently not. They got their guy. And looking ahead, over the next 3 weeks, the Broncos get the Colts in week 15. That's the 12th easiest matchup for fantasy quarterbacks. Then we get the Chargers. That game could turn into a shootout. A lot of points could be scored in that game. The Chargers offense is hot. The Broncos offense is hot. And then in the fantasy championship week, week 17, it's the Bengals. They are the 3rd easiest matchup for fantasy quarterbacks. You talk about shootouts. That game, I guarantee that game is going to be a shootout. I don't know what the betting line is going to be for that week, but smash the over on that game. These offenses are going to score a lot of points in that game. And I also got a dark horse at quarterback. You're going to laugh at me, especially after last week. But stick with me here. Will Levis could. And I know most people aren't going to start, and I'm not going to recommend starting Will Levis, but in deeper leagues, in super flex formats, I would consider Will Levis over the next 3 weeks. Week 15 is the Bengals, who are 3rd easiest matchup for fantasy quarterbacks. We just talked about them. They generate shootouts. Even the Titans, even Will Levis can score some points against the Bengals. That's the Colts in week 16. The Jaguars are the number 1 easiest matchup for the quarterback position. Get them in the fantasy championship game. I know. He just played the Jaguars in week 14. Fell on his face. I understand that. I do. I understand it. Second time's the charm. Second time's the charm. But here's my thing. If any quarterback can go on a Jameis Winston-like run, get hot, run pure, with touchdowns, big plays down the field, it's Will Levis. He's got the weapons. He's got the arm. He wants to make plays. He's so much like Jameis Winston. He really is. His play style is Jameis Winston-like, just living on the edge, chucking it deep, throwing balls he shouldn't be throwing, which turns into a lot of mistakes. I get that. But what happens if he just runs pure? Just hear me out. Just hear me out. Will Levis. Could happen. Could happen. Let's get to running backs. League-winning running back candidates. Obviously, we're not going to talk about the obvious guys. Derrick Henry, Saquon Barkley. I'm not going to talk about Justin Jefferson, Jamar Chase. We're not going to give you those guys. We're going a little bit deeper. How about Tony Pollard? I think Tony Pollard could be a league winner at the running back position. He's going to be on a lot of championship rosters at the end of the season. He's getting all the touches in that backfield right now. He out-touched Tajay Spears 23-7 in week 14. He's 6th in opportunity share, 6th in targets, 9th in carries. He's also top 10 in rushing yards and receptions. He's a full-blown bell cow, dual threat running back in that backfield. He's got 10 carries of 15 or more yards, which is 7th among all running backs. He's an explosive player. That the explosiveness that we weren't getting from him last year in Dallas, coming off that broken leg at the end of the previous season, it's back. It's back for Tony Pollard. He's explosive again, and we're seeing it even in the Titans offense. He's reached 20-plus opportunities, carries plus targets in 9 of 13 games. And he just ran for over 102 yards in week 14. He's been over 100 in 2 of the last 3 weeks. Look at the Titans schedule, week 15. It's the Bengals. They're pretty decent against fantasy running backs, but it's a vulnerable defense. You can't deny it's a vulnerable defense. We just saw that with Rico Dowdle last week. Tony Pollard can do that. Week 16, it's the Colts, who are the 5th easiest matchup for the running back position, and the Jaguars in the fantasy championship. Ride Tony Pollard to a title. Start him with confidence. He could be a league winner. Chuba Hubbard. Chuba Hubbard, wheels up, all the way up for Chuba Hubbard. He's got the new contract. Jonathan Brooks out for the year, RIP. And with Brooks going down in week 14, Chuba Hubbard played 97% of the snaps. He's a full-blown bell cow. And all in the season, he's 7th in opportunity share. He's 7th in carries. He's 9th in targets. And in week 14, according to PFF, he forced 6 missed tackles. He's a machine. Chuba Hubbard is a machine. He is the Panthers' offense. Just reached 1,000 yards for the first time in his career. He's 6th in rushing yards in the league. He's top 10 in total touchdowns. He's top 5 in runs of 15 yards or more with 12. He's averaging over 15 fantasy points per game. He's a top 15 running back in fantasy football. And the Panthers offense is playing so much better, which can only be a good thing for Chuba Hubbard. Bryce Young being better, the offense being better is good for Chuba. Looking at the schedule, it's the Cowboys in week 15, easy matchup. Cardinals, week 16, easy matchup. And then it's the Buccaneers, who give up points in buckets in the fantasy championship week. Ride Chuba Hubbard to your championship. I got a few honorable mentions real quick. Isaac Guerrero, if it wasn't for the foot injury, he would have made this list. He would have been one of the top guys I talked about, as would have been Bucky Irving. If it wasn't for whatever's going on with his back, his hip, I already had him penciled in. Coming into last week, I knew I was going to do this episode. I already had Bucky Irving penciled in. If he ends up getting healthy, gets on the field, even for 2 of these weeks, Bucky Irving could be a league winner if he assumes the role that he's been in. And we also got Josh Jacobs and Chase Brown. These guys are getting heavy workloads. They're peaking at the right time in the season. Schedules are decent. I know Chase Brown has a couple of tough matchups, but the Bengals offense is playing so well. Chase Brown is playing so well. He's not sharing the backfield with anybody. Could be Chase Brown season over the next 3 weeks. I want to give you a dark horse running back who could be a league winner, and that is Kamani Vidal. Kamani Vidal of the Chargers, the rookie running back. He just outstepped Gus Edwards 53% to 43% in week 14. He's got so much more juice than Gus Edwards. He's a big, explosive running back, and he adds value in the passing game where Gus Edwards and Hassan Haskins don't. Remember, I don't know what week it was, like week 6 or so. It was like Kamani Vidal's NFL debut. They ran him, it's just the first quarter or something. They ran him on a wheel route up the sideline. He caught like a 30-yard ball for a touchdown down the sideline. Kamani Vidal can do that. He can do that. I got to get used to saying his name as Vidal. Whole offseason, I was calling him Kamani Vidal. Vidal. Whatever. I don't know what it is anymore. It's Vidal. So J.K. Dobbins likely out for the duration of the playoffs. Maybe he's back week 17, probably more like week 18 or the start of the playoffs. The schedule over the next few weeks: Buccaneers in week 15, Broncos in week 16, and it's the Patriots who are super vulnerable to the run in the fantasy championship week. Fire up Kamani Vidal. He could be your dark horse league winner. At wide receiver, Jauan Jennings, league winner. Just, you don't even have to pencil this one in. Put it in permanent marker. Jauan Jennings, league winner. He's the real number one wide receiver in San Francisco. It's not Deebo Samuel. Let me tell you that. 4 games with Brock Purdy and since the Brandon Ayuk injury. 7 catches for 93 yards. He was the wide receiver 15. 10 catches for 91 yards and a touchdown. He was wide receiver 7. Then we had the snow game. It was 3 catches for 56 yards. Wide receiver 53. Whatever. You can throw that one away. Then he comes back with 7 catches, 90 yards, 2 touchdowns. Is the wide receiver 5 in week 14. Not to mention that huge game that he had earlier in the season. 11 catches, 175 yards, 3 touchdowns. He was the wide receiver 1 overall on the week. He can do that. He's got that upside. Week 14, we saw a 30% target share. He had 32% of the air yards, 3rd of the first read targets, according to Fantasy Points data. And Jennings out-targeted the rest of the 49ers wide receivers. He had 8 targets. The rest of the wide receivers on that team had 5. Clear number 1. Clear number 1 wide receiver there. It's George Kittle. It's Jauan Jennings. Where is Deebo? Nobody knows. He's on Twitter. He's a wide receiver 13 in fantasy points per game. He's number 5 in yards per route. Jauan Jennings is number 15 in explosive plays. He's on pace for a 1,000-yard season for the first time in his career. He has a 32% target share over the last month. Only Puka Nacua has a higher target share among wide receivers. Look at the schedule. It's the Rams week 15, the Dolphins in week 16, and it's the Lions in week 17. Those could all be shootout games. And looking at the Rams game, that's the team that he torched for 175 yards and 3 touchdowns in week 15. I'm just saying. I also think Courtland Sutton could be a league winner at the wide receiver position. He's been dominant since his 0 catch, 0 target game back in week 7. Since then, he's averaged 9.5 targets per game, 7 receptions per game, 91 receiving yards per game, including 3 100-yard performances from Courtland Sutton. And according to the Fox broadcast the other night, since week 8, Courtland Sutton and Bo Nix, they've led the NFL in quarterback wide receiver combination completions, more than Matthew Stafford and Cooper Kupp, more than Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase. Courtland Sutton is 7th in targets on the year, 2nd in air yards, 5th in deep targets. He's 4th in red zone targets, so he's going to get some touchdowns over the next few weeks. Look at the schedule. It's the Colts, Chargers, and the Bengals. Wide receivers destroy the Bengals. Fire up Courtland Sutton. He could be a league winner. Honorable mention, Jackson Smith and Jigba. I couldn't choose. I couldn't just stick with 2 guys. I got to give you quick. Jackson Smith and Jigba. He's 5th in receiving yards, 9th in targets, 6th in receptions and yards after the catch. So he's getting it done in all areas of the game. And he hasn't had fewer than 11.9 fantasy points since all the way back in week 7. Jackson Smith and Jigba on his way to being a league winner. He's got 3 rush attempts since week 10 as well. So they're trying to get the ball to him in new ways. You love to see when an offense recognizes, we got a playmaker in that guy right there. Let's get him the ball in more ways. Let's get him the football. Let's get him involved in this offense. Look at the schedule. It's the Packers, Vikings, Bears. Those could all turn out to be shootouts. They could. It's not the easiest schedule, but it's not the hardest. Jackson Smith and Jigba, league winner potential. As is Adam Thielen. I got to give you another one. Adam Thielen. He's averaged 21.6 fantasy points per game over the last 2 weeks, combined for 21 targets between week 13 and week 14, 28% target share over that span, 17 receptions, averaging over 100 yards per game over the last 2 weeks. He's the clear number one go-to target for Bryce Young, who, as we mentioned earlier, is playing good football right now. No target competition in that offense. The schedule is the Cowboys, Cardinals, and the Buccaneers. And how about a dark horse candidate? 2 dark horse candidates. How about Rome Odunze, dark horse candidate to be a league winner this year, coming off a 2-touchdown game in week 14. He leads the team with 12 end zone targets, so he's probably getting a couple more touchdowns over the next couple of weeks. He's averaging 8 targets per game over the last 4 games, which is since the Shane Waldron firing. That includes 2 10-target games. Looking at the schedule, it's the Vikings who give up the most fantasy points to the wide receiver position, the Lions who give up the 7th most, and it's the Seahawks in week 17. He could be a league winner if anything happens to either DJ Moore or Keenan Allen. Just keep it in mind. Rome Odunze. Don't forget it. And the other dark horse candidate is Jakobi Meyers. He's quietly the wide receiver 21 in fantasy points per game right now. He scored at least 13 PPR points in 7 of 9 games. Since Devontae Adams has either been out of the lineup or traded away, he's had at least 10 targets in 6 of his last 8 games, including each of the last 3 consecutive games with more than 10 targets for Jakobi Meyers. He's averaging more fantasy points per game than Marvin Harris Jr. He's averaging more than Tyreek Hill, George Pickens, Zay Flowers, Lad McConkey, and I got that from Player Profiler. And his upcoming schedule is the Falcons, Jaguars, and Saints. Beautiful schedule. Jakobi Meyers could be a league winner down the stretch. He's going to be on a lot of championship rosters when it's all said and done with. Moving on to tight end, it's Trey McBride. I don't need to tell you about Trey McBride, but I'm going to tell you about Trey McBride anyway. He's already a top 3 tight end in fantasy football. And that's despite still to this day, still has not caught a touchdown all season long. What is he up to? Over 80 catches at this point. Still no touchdowns for Trey McBride. I know he recovered a fumble at one point, but that doesn't count for us. No touchdown catches for Trey McBride. Looking at the schedule, it's the Patriots in week 15, the Panthers in week 16, and the Rams in week 17. Trey McBride, what happens? What happens if he starts scoring touchdowns? What if the touchdown regression just hits so hard in a good way for Trey McBride over the next 3 weeks? He is going to absolutely break fantasy football. He's already scoring this many points without touchdowns. What happens if he has a 2-touchdown game in week 16 and he scores another touchdown in week 17? He's going to destroy fantasy football. He's going to be the reason why teams win a championship. You don't even need to tell you to start Trey McBride. I just want you to be excited with me about Trey McBride. We also need to be excited about David Njoku. Looking at his schedule. Week 15, it's the Chiefs. I know they got a good defense. However, they are susceptible to tight ends specifically. They're the 3rd easiest matchup for the tight end position. That's the Bengals with the 8th easiest matchup for the tight end position. And the Dolphins in week 17, they're the 10th easiest for tight ends. And Njoku, he's been thriving ever since Jameis Winston took over at quarterback. He's got 30 targets and 3 touchdowns over the last 2 weeks. 2 weeks. Not since, Jameis took over. 2 weeks. David Njoku combined for 30 targets and 3 touchdowns over the last 2 weeks. He's going to be one of, if not the number 1 tight end in the fantasy playoffs. And when he saw the Bengals in week 7, he gets them again in the semifinals. When David Njoku played against the Bengals in week 7, he carved them up for 10 receptions, 76 yards, scored a touchdown, and he finished as the tight end 1 overall on the week. He'll see them again in the semifinals. He's going to see them again in the semifinals. And then I got a dark horse candidate. This one actually goes deep. A dark horse candidate for tight end league winner, and that is Jatavian Sanders in Carolina, the rookie, he was playing well before he hurt his neck. Came back last week, was kind of, eased back into the offense. Bryce Young's playing well. He needs another option outside of Adam Thielen, and the schedule is good. It's the Cowboys, Cardinals, and the Buccaneers.